There was a warning, sir. There was no reason to what they did to Kashmir.
Today we're at the Freedom Tower in Miami, and we're here to build awareness for all of the Kashmiris that fled in 1990 from their homeland. We're here for Kashmiri Exodus Day, and we're gathered here peacefully to do a protest for all of those who have lost their lives. And we want everyone to know that Kashmir is only a stone's throw away from our homeland. And we're lucky enough to have the freedoms that we have here. And we'd like to have Kashmiri people feel that they can have the same freedom to go back to their homeland or to exercise their rights here. So please support us.
Somnath Tiku, age unknown, March 1st, 1990. Ratan Lal, age unknown, March 1st, 1990.
Stand here before you, having been born and raised in Kashmir, representing thousands of years of history, culture and tradition, which now faces a real threat of being erased and wiped off from the face of this world, earth. How did it come to this, and where did it all start? Life in Kashmir changed abruptly for all Kashmiris in the 1980s when the valley came in the grip of Islamic militancy. Sponsored by Pakistan, local Kashmiri Muslims and terrorists from across the border began to change the very fabric of Kashmiri society, turning the home we once knew and loved into a theocratic and autocratic society where Kashmiri Hindus were quickly recognized as undesirables, non-believers, and police informers. Thus, 26, 1990, Dr. Rajnath was unceremoniously gunned down by terrorists just outside his home. He was a theatre assistant at Lal Ded Hospital, where I also worked at that time. We had spoken earlier on that fateful day during a case in which he was assisting me. It was the night of April 28, 1990. All Muslim residents and nurses were off due to Eid. At Lal Ded Hospital, I was the only Kashmiri Hindu senior resident doctor working along with a Sikh intern, besides other Sikh and Ladakhi nurses. There was an attempt to abduct me by a group of terrorists that night, which I very cleverly thwarted by riling up the patients and family members in the waiting area who refused to have the sole physician in hospital taken away for a mysterious house call. I remained on my post undeterred until my relief came the next morning, at which point I said my final goodbyes to the hospital and the death valley which Kashmir had become by then. We are here today to remember all these stories. We are here to channel our pain and the tears and cries of our brothers and sisters who are not here with us anymore. We are here to remind the world of another Holocaust that seems to have been erased from the pages of our history books. The social media campaign Red for Kashmir took the internet by storm last year. Well, there was no social media on January 19, 30 years ago, when Kashmir truly became red from the blood of our friends and relatives. There were no celebrities and liberal media wings demanding the blackout to be lifted. There was no New York Times sharing photos of the carnage and destruction of Kashmiri Pandit homes, lives, temples and workplaces for an aghast Western society. I am inspired by one hashtag in particular. Hashtag Hum Wapas Aayenge. Thank you very much.
Miss Sheila Kaul Tikku, age 61, Neelakant Ganju, age 46, Ajay Kapoor, 70s, Premnath Bhatt, age 49, ML Bhan, age 57, Kishan Gopal Barwa.
We're honored to be here to remember those who had suffered years ago as a result of Islamic radicalism in Kashmir. You know, Kashmir, unfortunately, has become known for being a place essentially a training ground for terrorist groups. Groups like Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Hizbul Mujahideen have their training grounds right in Kashmir. In fact, Hizbul Mujahideen, they were the owners of the Pakistani compound where Osama bin Laden had lived and was killed in. And you have to know also that with regards to Hizbul Mujahideen, there's an organization right here in South Florida, right here in the United States, called the Islamic Circle of North America, that is connected to Hizbul Mujahideen. Indeed, this group ICNA, this Islamic Circle, is the American arm of Jamaat-e-Islami overseas. And it's a threat not only to Kashmir, not only to India, but here in the United States as well. And we must understand, why has all of these terrorist organizations been able to have training grounds inside of Kashmir? Because people living in Kashmir, these radical Muslims living in Kashmir, have overlooked all these organizations. They have ignored them. They've allowed these groups to act with impunity. And that's why these groups are allowed to act in Kashmir. It's no different with regards to Beirut with Hezbollah or Gaza with Hamas. When the citizens don't fight against those terrorist organizations who live with them, then these groups, of course, they are allowed to grow and continue to grow, which has been the case with these groups in Kashmir. But that is until now. Now we have had an Indian government that recognizes the threat that's happening within Kashmir and is finally taking back that which belongs to India. The government under the Prime Ministership of Narendra Modi. Because we know if you don't fight terrorism, if you don't go after the terrorists, then not only are they allowed to stay there, but they continue to grow. And so thankfully today, there is a government in India that recognizes that threat, that recognizes the fact that so many Hindus have perished and have been thrown out of their own land in Kashmir. And let us state clearly that Kashmir is part of India, just as India is part of Kashmir. And that has to stay that way, not just today, but forever. And so again, I want to thank.
So I'm glad today we are here, at least to remember the ones that we lost. I see the names being repeated one after another, and our heart bleeds for them. But what about those hundreds of thousands of Hindus that were forcibly converted or killed for the last 500 years? We don't remember the names. We don't know who they are. You know why? Because Kashmir, for those of you who don't know, is a valley. And those days, there was no internet. There was no CNN. And there was no way that their voice could get out of that valley. So those people are given that only 11 families survived. And every Kashmiri Hindu you see today is one of those 11 families. We have been driven to an abject minority where even in India, we did not have a political voice because we are such small numbers. They will not stop unless we make them to stop, unless we resist them. Because they don't fear death. They actually want to cause death. They celebrate death. And right from the streets of New York, the streets of London, the streets of Beirut, the streets of Israel, and the streets of India, they are scattered all over. And world citizens, please awake and arise. This is not something to smile about. This is a danger to the entire world. And we represent, not just us, but the whole world that must stand against Islamic fundamentalism. Thank you for joining us today.
Hira Lal Khar, age unknown, March 3rd, 1990. Dilip Singh, age unknown, March 3rd, 1990. Dalip Kumar, age 47, March 3rd, 1990. Satinder Kumar, age unknown, March 5th.
As we were naming the names of those who could not survive. 10 names at a time. Those were just not the names. Those are people. Those are people with same blood as we have. Some of those people could have been standing amongst us today, but they were not there. They were not as lucky as we are. I am one of those Hindus who was in Kashmir during 30 years ago when all this happened. 30 years ago, I remember there were many brutal killings in Kashmir. Sarla Bhatt, she was a nurse, she was abducted, she was raped, and then she was killed. Another lady, Girja Tikku, she was abducted, she was raped, and then her body was cut into 2 pieces on a bandsaw machine. They came to the home of this Saranand Premi. He lived in Anantnag. He was a poet, and told him, we want to talk to him and we want to take him with us. His wife was very reluctant in sending him. So what he did that she said, okay, my son, he was a 28-year-old son, he will accompany the daddy. So he accompanied him, they took him. Next day, they found his body ridden with bullets on the street. Both father and son were killed. And they were not only killed. We Hindus put tilak on our forehead. This tilak was pierced with knives. That was a brutal kind of killing. They wanted to tell every Kashmiri Pandit, just get out. We don't want you here. And it was not only those terrorists. General population in Kashmir, we had about 95-98% Kashmiri Muslims, also supported. They were the silent spectators and silent supporters. So I will tell that most of the Kashmiris, Hindus, 500,000 that we say, who are ethnically cleansed by Islamic terrorists and Muslims of Kashmir. Today, my home is in Kashmir, but I cannot go there. I have to go there. If I go there, last time I went there and I had to stay in a hotel. My home is occupied by my neighbor. He's a Kashmiri Muslim. He's not a terrorist. So when we were leaving Kashmir, these Kashmiri Muslims in Kashmir used to talk among themselves. Hey, ye makan go is chon, ye makan go myon. Like this house is yours, this house is mine, that house is mine. So this was an ethnic cleansing of an entire population of Kashmiri Hindus. And what was our fault? That we didn't belong to their religion. We were Hindus. We were not Muslims. So that was our fault. And that's why we were thrown out of Kashmir. Now we are in United States of America. And let me tell you, even here, not Kashmiri, but Muslims in general, have taken foothold in the Congress, US Congress, and you can see how radical they are. They are not only radicals, they have converted a lot of congressmen in their fold. And nobody talks about Kashmiri Hindus. They only talk about genocide on Kashmiri Muslims. And what genocide? Because they don't have internet there. And that is only done for their safety. But they will only talk about that in US Congress and all those places. So we have to be very cautious and careful because our existence, because we are experienced people, we suffered because of Islamic terrorism. And we have to be cautious in United States of America. We have to, at whatever level we can, we should go to our local congressmen, we should go to our senators and try to convince them about the threats and the dangers of Islamic terrorism. This is a sad day, and on this sad day, I just want to pray for all those who got killed and who were not fortunate to be here amongst us. Thank you very much.
Thank Deepak Ganju for organizing this event and making us aware what is happening. Next, you know, as mentioned by other speakers, it was 19th January 1990 when this fall occurred. Slogans were being raised from the mosque loudspeakers. Kafir ko maro, kill the Hindus. Hundreds of Hindus were murdered. Women were gang raped and killed. Hindu temples were razed and destroyed. You have just heard the chilling personal story from Dr. Rajda. It is difficult to narrate those tragic stories, but I thank her for her courage to make us aware. I must also mention my deep sense of appreciation to Mr. Joe Kaufman, who has to leave, a Jewish journalist and represents the Jewish community that has also witnessed the greatest genocide as Holocaust and understand the pain. Thanks, Joe. He's not. To return to their homeland, hum wapas jayenge, you must have heard, one day, and immerse their ashes in the waters of Kashmir. Now, after the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, that there is a ray of hope to fulfill their dreams. I cannot thank everyone enough, my brothers and sisters, for taking time and joining us here at a short notice to share the grief of our fellow Kashmiri Hindus and support their hopes to return one day to their homeland. And observing silence for 2 minutes for those who give their lives.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
हम वापस आएंगे. Thank you.